I want to talk about therapeutic full disclosures today. I know it's been a while since I've recorded, and I feel like every time I record, I say that sentence, but this is something that I think is an often misunderstood process, specifically the timing of it, expectations of it, but the thing that I most consistently bump up to is who drives it. I'm going to share a little bit today about how I do therapeutic full disclosures, more so the process of it, which may vary a little bit from how other therapists or clinicians do that. However, my goal is to put my clients in positions to bring integrity and morality back into their relationships. So when I talk specifically about the ways in which I go about helping and guiding my clients through a full disclosure process, it is with that in mind, because my clients are the ones who have robbed the relationship of responsibility. They've robbed the relationships of integrity. They've robbed the relationships of morality. They have broken trust. They have lied. They have done the wrong. Therefore, they are the individuals who are responsible for driving this process. When I first started doing this work as a CSAT, I often heard my clients come in and say, my wife, my partner wants a full disclosure. And I would go along with this. I'd say, okay, great, let's do that. Let's work towards that. I might even have a meeting where all of us get together and we talk about expectations and timing. But the one thing that I never addressed was the fact that the person who is harmed and the person who is lied to is the individual who is driving this process. And so now, if you are one of those clients who I did that with, that was wrong. That is not a helpful way to go through this process. And for those of you out there that are wondering, like, how does this get done? Maybe you are a spouse or a partner who has been betrayed and you're thinking, when am I going to get to the truth? The reality is it is the person who's lied that they are responsible. They are the ones that need to be driving this process. They need to be advocating that this gets done. They need to be advocating to get all of the tools and resources in place for themselves. And they need to be the ones asking the questions, not, am I ready for a full disclosure? But I need to do a full disclosure. This is important because my lies and secrets have harmed this person unimaginably, and I need to give and offer them the truth. So I hope I'm clear there that the person who is responsible here is the individual who lied. Very simply put. If your spouse or your partner is the one advocating that a disclosure takes place, you are missing them. You are missing your work that is right in front of you. This is a really low-hanging bar. You lied. Now it's time to tell the truth. There's a process in which to do that. There's a reason that there's a process, and I'll get into that in a little bit, but you need to drive it. When you don't drive it, it usually falls on two other individuals, either your spouse or your partner or your therapist, and I will not take that responsibility. And if I hear that your spouse is taking that responsibility, that's something that I'm going to call attention to right away, and it's going to slow the process down because it tells me that you aren't doing the work necessary to heal, and you're not doing your work. You are offloading what is yours onto your spouse, and they are taking it up, which is just re-traumatizing. It is probably following a similar pattern that maybe has been around for a long time of not taking responsibility, which inevitably leaves a lot of things on the table that others inevitably will pick up, because if those things don't get done, nothing will get done. And so here's a chance for you to take responsibility. And I strongly urge all of you that have lied and have betrayed the people that you tell that you say you love, I strongly urge you to be the ones that are driving this process and advocating for it from the beginning. If that does happen, which it does at times, the next step is really understanding what is the full disclosure process. Now, the way in which I do disclosures most likely differs from the way in which a lot of other people do it. What I tell my clients when they come into my office is, if you want to do a full disclosure, that is great. The next steps are to buy a workbook. I share that I usually point them in the direction of the Drake and Cottle workbook that is most widely used by CSATs. I say, buy this workbook. You start reading the workbook, and when the workbook starts talking about writing, you start writing. And once you have your first draft, you can send that draft to me, and then we can start talking about it. The reason I do it this way is, again, I want to model and put my clients in the position that they got themselves in of being the responsible party. I will not hold hands through this process. And I understand that that can feel harsh. Some may even argue that that is harming or damaging to the betrayed partner. That part I'm probably a little more sensitive to. just given the fact that I know and understand that they've probably been waiting for this for a really long time and it isn't fair. But what I tell the partners often is you can set expectations for when you want this, and I'm not going to talk you out of those expectations. The reality is my role is to determine, one, the readiness and the safety of that disclosure, so that when they do deliver it to their partners, what they're getting is something that is accountable, something that is honest, and something that is structured in a way that keeps the partner in mind, meaning it answers their questions. It doesn't skirt responsibility. It doesn't minimize things. It doesn't justify things. And it doesn't include details that are either inappropriate or don't have anything to do with acting out behaviors. I want my clients to take responsibility and ownership. And this process of a therapeutic full disclosure is one of the most tangible ways to do that, because most clients who come to see me know at some point getting honest is going to be integral to their healing. And even though they may be most fearful about how their disclosure is going to be received, they are also interested in healing. And those two things can often bump up to each other. As far as timing goes, I do think that therapeutic full disclosures vary in timing, not because I'm slowing down the process, but mostly because the clients are dragging their feet in, one, getting it done and taking the time necessary to do this work. If time is an excuse that either you are wrestling with or maybe have shared, or if you're a partner and have heard the time excuse, the one thing I kind of draw back to with all of my clients is if you take all of the time that you've spent acting out, that you have coordinated around acting out, and the energy that you have exerted in protecting your lies, if we combined all of that and took all of that energy and directed it towards this full disclosure process, how quickly do you think this could be done? And then I let them sit with that, because the reality is for the most part, all of these people who are hiding and living a secret sexual life, they are exerting and exuding a ton of energy to hide and lie and cheat and steal from people. And if they've truly stopped those behaviors, what they have gotten back is a lot of time. What they have gotten back is a lot of energy. And so we get to redirect that to something that is going to be helpful to their process, but also helpful to their partners, in order for them to be able to make informed decisions, to be able to consent fully, because you've robbed your wife and your spouse and your partner of their reality without their consent. And here's your opportunity to give that back so that they can make informed choices moving forward, so that they can actually consent, so that they can actually feel like they know what the heck is going on. And the one thing that I would say is probably the biggest barrier to a disclosure, really the biggest barrier for me agreeing to move forward in a disclosure, is if my clients are more interested in being believed than in telling the truth. Now, those may sound similar, but they're very, very different. If I want to be believed, I'm going to communicate in a way that makes that outcome most likely. And if that is the outcome that I want, that means I need to try to do whatever I can to get the other person to believe me, which oftentimes involves telling versions of the truth that are packaged in a way to elicit a positive response. That is not a good disclosure. That is a really crappy disclosure. And so what I tell my clients is the whole goal of this disclosure is to tell the truth. Full stop. There is no other goal. We are here to tell the truth. That is it. And you are responsible to tell the truth. I will help you pull some of that out. I will help you point to the language in which you use or the ways in which you are manipulating. But the goal here is to tell the truth. And that is it. Nothing more, nothing less, to tell the truth, not to be believed. And what that does also require is letting go and surrendering the outcome of what might happen after a disclosure. Because the reality is a lot of this information is new, and because it is new, it is harmful, because your partner is now becoming aware for the first time what has been done to them. They have felt it. Most of them know something new is going to be shared with them, but now they get to experience in its fullness. And so to expect a positive outcome is extremely selfish and extremely inappropriate. But by taking responsibility and telling the truth, you are affording them the ability to actually live in the reality that you robbed from them. And that's why I think it's important to put the responsibility where it belongs. The responsibility belongs on the person who has betrayed, not the person who has been betrayed. Another really common question that I get is timing. How much time does this take? Again, that really varies. But the process moves as fast as the person who is taking responsibility allows it to move. There is a reality here of pace and timing. And this is why we often recommend not sharing a lot of this information beforehand, because the way in which it is shared is often highly manipulative. And so this process also affords an opportunity to teach the people who have been lying what it sounds like to tell the truth, because it sounds a lot different than what has been coming out of their mouths up to this point. And so there is a learning period there. That being said, that doesn't mean people have to be okay waiting. It doesn't mean that partners have to be okay sitting on the sidelines and waiting for their reality. They do not have to be okay. I often tell partners, you can have all the expectations in the world, because really telling the truth is one of the lowest bars to meet in a relationship. It is one of the lowest expectations I think that most couples have for one another, is like, hey, I expect that you're honest with me. And so I'm not going to tell a partner that they need to be okay waiting, because they don't need to be okay waiting. They can be pissed, they can be hurt, they can be sad, they can be angry. It is extremely painful to engage in this process and then be told, hey, it's going to take some time for you to get the truth. Although that may be a reality, they do not have to be okay with it. They do not have to tolerate it. They can communicate what their experience is like waiting for that. And this is why I often include in the disclosures that I do with my clients a section on the whole process itself. I often ask my clients to write a section dedicated to how they engaged in the full disclosure process. The reason that I do this is it acknowledges the ways in which they have perpetuated the harm. Even though they're engaging in a therapeutic process, the way in which they engaged can be often harmful, especially if they haven't driven this process from the beginning. So I know I gave a really kind of high level overview of the disclosure process, but I just kind of want to give the kind of quick bullet points. The person who has betrayed is responsible for driving. Timing varies. I know that is a very gray answer, but that is just the reality. Is there is no time that I think is going to be consistent between any two individuals. So it varies. Realistically though, again, if you take all the energy that you've dedicated to acting out and put it towards this disclosure process, the reality in my mind is it doesn't need to take as long as you might think. And the last thing is you don't have to be okay waiting. You don't have to be okay with how long it's taking. You don't have to be okay tolerating the process or the pace. You can be pissed off that you have engaged in this work, that you have asked for the truth, and now you are being told to wait. That can piss you off. I am just encouraging you to direct that where it belongs, because it can be easy to blame your therapist. It can be easy to blame everybody else. But the reality is the person that robbed you of your reality is the person responsible for giving it to you in a way and in a time frame that is helpful and not harmful. And so it's okay to feel during this process. You don't have to manage those emotions in a way that protects the addict from feeling crappy about lying. And so I just wanted to leave that with you all today so that you can, maybe you are determining whether or not this is a process that you want to go down. Maybe this is a process you're fearful of. Maybe you're a partner and you're not sure if you want to know the truth. All okay questions. I would just highly encourage you to work with somebody who has been trained in therapeutic full disclosures, who understands both sides of this experience, both the person who has betrayed and the person who has been betrayed, because it is important to understand that the most important piece of this process is that it is structured and it is safe. That the role of the therapist is to really create a framework in which this process can be structured and done in a way that protects and guards everybody in the room, not from protecting any secrets, but protecting against continued harm. Have a great day.